Hi, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of There's More to Be Done podcast, hosted by me, Anam. Today, we are going to talk about identifying patterns. So, let me define what patterns are the way I see it. Patterns are situation when you feel like you end up in the same situation over and over again, no matter what you do differently. So, why do you think that is? If you're doing things differently, then why are you ending up in the same situation that you don't want to be in, or in the complete opposite situation, or where you want to be? The reason I think this happens is because with our experiences, we sometimes don't realize that our unconscious comfort levels live in chaos. Living those bad experiences, living in the moments where we feel the highs, because in my mind, I know that this is something I've dealt with before. And this time, I'm taking a calculated risk. You think that I've thought this through. I've been in a similar situation before. I know I'm choosing the same option as before, but I know how last time turned out, so I'm going to be more careful this time. I'm going to avoid all the pitfalls. I will do better in this situation and get a different result. Let's use an example to put this into context. I'm not going to use a dating example, I'm going to use a job example because I think that would make more sense. My theory is that as human beings, financially, we're all a little bit risk averse. Everyone has bills to pay, so we don't want to take a new risk, or at least we don't want to go into a situation where we don't know much about and we might fail and end up in a financial hole. We're human beings, we like predictability, even if it's with a bad outcome. At least we know what's going to happen with this approach that we take by default. So, in the context of a job, I think what happens is that when we give these interviews, when we apply for all these jobs, we unconsciously actually limit ourselves to only the jobs we think that we're going to be good at, or we're going to be able to do justice to, or a job where we think we're going to do really well. Because why would we want to do something new when everything is going smooth? Have people be skeptical, give us constructive criticism when our unconscious mind knows we'll be liked and applauded if we just take the job that we know really well. Unconsciously, or sometimes even consciously, we end up applying for only jobs that are not risky for us. Because if I currently work at an associate level, I don't know how I'm going to do in a management position or a supervisor position or a same level position, but in a much larger organization where there is more scrutiny, more accountability. It's scary. It's very, very scary. So, even if I do apply for these jobs, I will somehow not end up doing the prep that I know in my heart I would need to do to give me an edge because the doubt seeps in, the imposter syndrome kicks in, and I don't end up making the extra effort I know that I need to do. And what ends up happening? A self fulfilling prophecy. Let's talk about that for a bit. What is a self fulfilling prophecy? According to positivepsychology.com, when our beliefs and expectations influence our behavior at a subconscious level, we are enacting what is called as a self-fulfilling prophecy. And trust me everyone, this is something that happens so often in our life, and that's why there's so much rave about positive manifestations because when we think negative and when we don't believe in ourselves, we automatically kind of have negative manifestations or self fulfilling prophecies. With our doubts and fears and imposter syndrome, when we go into these interviews, we don't present ourselves as the confident, charismatic potential manager we know we can be. We show up nervous, trying to upsell, and don't leave such a lasting impression. Result? We get selected by mediocre companies, by bosses who know they can leverage our lack of confidence and end up in the same cycle in a different company over and over again. If you're in a bad environment, you're not a prisoner. If you decide, you do have agency to change it. Because let's face it, no one wants to consciously choose bad decisions. But you not taking the time to do a root cause analysis for why you see yourself there over and over again, that's got to be on us. And I'm sure you must have a question that if I do this unconsciously and if I'm choosing to be in these bad situations, How do I identify that I'm self sabotaging myself? How do I figure that out? How do I know that I'm a person who's responsible for this and I have the ability to change it? Now, we're a creature of self preservation, right? That's what we do. We avoid pain, we avoid unfamiliarity because we don't know what is in store for us. If I know that touching an hot switched on iron is going to give me a bad burn, but there is another object which might look same and which appears to be on, which may not or may be hot at the time, I have no idea what the risk of touching the other object is going to be. But I'll still take my chance with the hot switched on iron because if I do get burned, I know exactly what to do. I know that this burn is going to take 2, 3 days to heal. I know that I have to apply an ointment, and it's no big deal. It'll heal. But with the unknown object, who knows? What if the burn is much more deeper? And what if my skin doesn't really heal? What if I have a scar? All these unknown variables, we don't like dealing with those unknown variables. And if we want to deal with these unknown variables, we want to do it in a very controlled environment because that makes us feel in control. It makes us feel safe. So we don't want to do things that will expose us to danger or where we know that there is a known danger and there is an unknown danger. Majority of the times we will end up choosing the known danger. With the known danger, we know how to heal from it. We know from experience that we can overcome it. And this is the reason why we get into unconscious patterns because it's less risky. If a big company opportunity comes in front of you, you act all nonchalant. Tell yourself that you're going to do this just the way you do everything else. You're going to go do the interview, and if it happens, it happens. Otherwise, it's okay. But what are you doing to prepare for it? Are you pushing yourself out of your comfort zone? You know, being in this role requires you to network. Being in this role requires you to get out of your comfort zone, talk to people who you don't know, build connections, build relationships. And all that is daunting. It's daunting and it's hard. It's something you've never done before. So, of course, you're going to avoid it. You're going to avoid it like a plague. But sitting and understanding why you're doing the things that you're doing and the way you're doing it, and getting feedback from everyone else, taking all that feedback and sitting and doing some self reflection through either journaling, meditation, or just watching the sky if that helps, that'll help you identify patterns. It is going to help you see what are your unconscious biases, what are your value systems, what are the fears that cause you to take those choices. When you identify the root cause of why you do the way you do things, that will show you how you ended up in the same situation even when you thought you did things differently. That's what's going to give you the answers. And once you know your patterns, then it becomes really easy to catch yourself when you're falling into those. It becomes easy to know and to decide that this is my default pattern, but this is not working. So I'm going to pause and shift and try the new strategy. The way I figured it out initially was just talking to friends. I have always been a person who's always discussed my issues, my problems, anything big or small with my friends. I know people don't do that much, but being an introvert, I was so desperate for people to like me back then that I thought maybe sharing about my life will help them share about their life and will bond on it. Well, to be honest, it is actually a really good strategy, but it only works with people who actually want to connect with you. Hence, at that time, my strategy was not that successful. I did end up making some close friends, but I was constantly afraid of actually sharing the real stuff with them because I wanted to be cool. I think even now I see that a lot everywhere where we're also constantly trying to fit into the world, in the society, that we're really scared of people not liking us. That's why when somebody asks us, "How are you? How's everything?" without a thought, we say, "Oh, I'm good. Everything is fine. What about you?" It's so superficial, yet we do it all the time. Due to my circumstances back when I was younger, friends were the only family I knew back then. They were the only people who got to see how I felt, the vulnerable, worried side of me, because they were the only people I could trust. And I didn't care what I was getting in return back then. Whenever somebody asked me how I was, I would just rejoice that somebody cares enough to ask me how I am. And I would always be the first person to raise my hand and say, "Hey, I'm dealing with something. I want your opinion on it." And I would then narrate the entire situation in explicit detail, explain how I reacted, and then ask people, "What do you think about it? Do you think I did well? What would you have done differently?" And I think in my attempt to just avoid being lonely, I just got into the habit of getting feedback from a very young age. Obviously, some people didn't want to be a part of it. And I made a lot of mistakes too, which ended up in some of them just walking away. But the ones that mattered, they stayed. And let me tell you about the ones who stay. They're the good ones. And if you have good friends, they're not going to sugarcoat things for you. They're going to be very brutally honest. And man, that's hard to hear, especially when you think that these are the people who are supposed to be on your side. And they're like, "Nope, I think you screwed up this one. I think you overreacted." It's really hard to hear. But because I was fortunate enough that I had a lot of them who had different personalities, which meant that some would be really blunt in telling me where I screwed up, and others would tell me how it's okay to make mistakes and how I can fix it. I think that's what was really helpful in identifying my patterns. Because then I would have a problem and I would go to my friends, discuss that, get tons of feedback, and then come home and sit and journal about them. I would sit and journal about how it frustrated me that I felt alone, that nobody understood me, or I would sit and write about how my behavior was justified and how others are, misunderstanding me and telling me how I overreacted, when according to me, it's a perfectly fine reaction. Later, I would just come to senses and see the merit in what they were saying. And just writing through all of those things and looking at it from a very objective way would help me see that I do have an unconscious pattern of overreacting or choosing bad or making the same mistakes over again. I think that's what helped me face the fact that I had a pattern of making those choices. And obviously, these were different patterns in different phases of life and even in different areas. And to be honest, sometimes I broke those patterns, made new patterns, and things improved. But then the situation I was, the phase of life I was in, needed a change in that new pattern now. And so I had to again go through the whole process and create a new pattern. One of the main things that I had to really understand was that I needed to take the ego out of the situation. I needed to understand that my decisions, my choices are not a reflection of my competence. It's just a reflection of your lack of experiences. And that's why talking to other people about their opinions and them sharing their experience on those situations, why do they do what they did or what they think I should have done, that really helped me see that maybe I am seeing some situations with a bias. Maybe I am taking a situation too personally because we're human beings. No matter how much we say that we're looking at things objectively, our lived experiences do come into play. It's something that we all do, stereotypes, lived experiences. opinions or even group conformity for opinions. These are all things that affect our decisions and choices in the moment. It's something that happens unconsciously, and the only thing we can do is identify when we're doing that. And once you know how to break these patterns and create those interruptions needed to change your behavior, you'll see how easy it becomes to just decide what you want from life, what you want to be, and practice incorporating these variances to get where you want to be. I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode today and found it helpful. If you did find it helpful or you think it'll help somebody you care about, please like and share the episode. Feel free to let me know if you have any comments or questions regarding this topic. I'll be more than happy to answer you. Thank you so much for choosing to invest your time in your growth and development. For more content, you can follow me on TikTok and Instagram at There's More to Be Done, or visit my blog at there'smoretobedone.blog. Links are in the episode description below. This is Anam, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. Keep learning, keep growing.